The Enlightenment is all about the changes from the scientific revolution and its emphasis on reason and empiricism being applied to the human social world. There were three essential concepts to the Enlightenment. Methods of science could be applied to understanding all aspects of life, specifically reason and rationalism. The scientific method could discover laws of human society, and the concept of human progress became essential. So, the most important generation of the Enlightenment occurred between 1687 and 1715. Writers such as Bernard de Fontenelle simplified scientific discoveries for a larger audience and spurred speculation about natural human laws. He was a French writer who tried to make science as easy to read as a novel to appeal to the masses. He wrote Conversations on the Plurality of Worlds. He was very skeptical about religion, and he stressed progress in his writing. Enlightenment thinkers, they wanted to go beyond this ancient way of thinking about humanity. And the Enlightenment was also about the rejection of absolute truth in this post-religious wars era. So our first philosopher we need to talk about is Thomas Hobbes. He is regarded as the first Enlightenment philosopher. He lived through the English Civil War and developed this unique view on government. He believed people were naturally wicked and selfish. His name has been associated with the state's claim to absolute authority over its subjects, and he elaborated on this topic in the Leviathan, in 1651. It was published. He claimed that the state of nature before society was organized, human life was solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short, and humans were guided by animalistic instincts and ruthless struggle for self-preservation, not by reason and moral ideals. He thought that people contracted to form a commonwealth, which placed its collective power into the hands of a sovereign authority. He also wrote about how the idea of an absolute ruler had unlimited power. Subjects may not rebel against this absolute ruler, and according to Hobbes, they must be suppressed if they do rebel against this absolute ruler. Hobbes' social contract idea is in order to escape the evils of man, people gave their freedom over to strong government in exchange for law and order, and thus this is the support for his rationale about why people should not revolt and rebel against an absolute ruler. So John Locke was an English philosopher who wrote a generation after Hobbes. He came up with a different view on the nature of humans and the social contract. He believed all humans are born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property. And he argues in this Second Treatise of Government about absolute rule, how the experience of politics during the Glorious Revolution was incorporated into the Second Treatise on Government. He believed humans lived in a state of equality and freedom. He agreed with Hobbes that all was not well in the state of nature, but people mutually agreed to establish a government to ensure the protection of their rights. He thought that we established mutual obligations with our government. The government protects the rights, and people respond reasonably to their government. People have the right to form a new government if the government is not protecting their rights. The ideas of the relationship between the people and the government were used in both the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Specifically, his ideas were used to support the demands for constitutional government, rule of law, and the protection of rights. Next is Pierre Bayle. He was a French Huguenot who lived in the Netherlands. He published in 1697 the Historical and Critical Dictionary. He wrote a lot about skepticism, and human beliefs varied, and so nothing can ever be known. His dictionary was in many private libraries, more than any other group. He remained Protestant while becoming a leading critic of traditional religious attitudes. He attacked superstition in his writing, religious intolerance, and dogmatism. By dogmatism, I mean the tendency to lay down principles as incontrovertibly true without considering evidence or opinion of others. He compelled people to believe a particular set of religious ideas, and he thought this idea was wrong, and this creates hypocrites. He believed nothing can ever be known beyond all doubt. individual conscience could determine one's actions. Next, so we have more exploration and literature about travel and skepticism. Truth and morality were relative rather than absolute. Travel and the discovery of new cultures illustrated the relative nature of beliefs across humanity. And Locke's essay concerning human understanding was central to this as it proposed the concept of tabula rasa. Tabula rasa is the idea that we are born as a blank slate. So, philosophers and the public. The philosophes, the true Enlightenment thinkers, applied to all philosophers of the age, but the word illustrates the importance of French culture and language. Although still banned, philosophical ideas were not as suppressed after the death of Louis XIV. Philosophers wanted to affect real society and government. In the Republic of Letters, we have intellectual communities of scholars and literary figures that stretched across national boundaries but respected differences in language and culture. Letters became the individual's way to write to each other from great distances. Voltaire and Diderot participated among many others. The philosophers also wrote in novels and plays, histories and philosophies, dictionaries, encyclopedias, all of which were filled with satire. So Montesquieu's our next philosopher. He critiqued European customs and government. In 1748, he published The Spirit of Laws, studied republics, monarchies, and despotism. He advocated to avoid tyranny and despotism through a separation of powers, and admired the English model of shared sovereignty. Before The Spirit of Laws, in 1721, he published the Persian Letters, and in the Persian Letters, he criticized French institutions, the Catholic Church, and the French monarchy. He attacked traditional religion. He advocated for religious toleration, the denunciation of slavery, and the use of reason to liberate human beings from their prejudices. The Spirit of Laws was a comparative study of governments that applied the scientific method to the social and political world in which these natural laws exist to govern social relationships of human beings. Montesquieu wanted the nobility of France to play an active role in the French government, and Montesquieu was a member of the noble class. Next, we have Voltaire. Voltaire was from a prosperous middle-class family, and he originally studied law, but he was really a playwright. He created 70 volumes of work. Mostly of them were satire. He admired English life in the philosophic letters on the English. And this he wrote about his admiration specifically of the freedom of press, political freedom, and religious toleration. He criticized absolute monarchy, and after living in England, he returned to France to find that his philosophic letters had been banned, and so he was exiled. He eventually settled near the Swiss border, and he became so wealthy that he ended up being able to write whatever he wanted. So in his writing, he criticized traditional religion and strongly attached to the ideal of religious toleration. He also advocated for deism, this religious outlook that's built on Newtonian world machine, suggesting existence of a mechanic who created the world, and this mechanic being God. And according to Voltaire, God had no direct involvement in the world that he had created and allowed it to run according to its own natural laws. Essentially, God didn't extend grace or answer prayers or grant miracles, and he said Jesus was not divine in his writing. Alright, next we have Denis Diderot. He compiled and edited the Encyclopedia, the Rational Dictionary of the Sciences, the Arts, and the Crafts, along with Jean Leronde d'Alembert. Excuse my French. The encyclopedia contained hundreds of thousands of articles by leading scientists, famous writers, skilled workers, and progressive priests. Topics chosen focused on Enlightenment ideals and reason. So that wraps up our 16.3